So Carmelo Anthony's family has received over $600,000 online since this incident happened. And they just went to court and they asked for a court-appointed attorney because they can't afford one.
The air inside the courtroom is heavy, thick, with whispers that bounce from one corner to the other like an invisible current. The case hasn't even officially begun for the day, and already the mood is different. Before the clerk can read the charges aloud, the sound of low, urgent murmurs spreads through the packed gallery. People lean toward one another, some cupping hands around their mouths as if afraid their voices might be overheard. The reason is no mystery. Word has already traveled. Carmelo Anthony's parents are no longer just the grieving mother and father of an accused son. Today, they are officially charged with far more than simply playing a role in the stabbing of Austin Metcalf. Prosecutors say the accusations now reach into something bigger, darker, a $10 million GoFundMe scheme that is directly tied to the murder investigation itself. On paper, it looked harmless enough.
All right, we're going to pause coverage for a moment because we have some breaking news out of Texas this afternoon. Carmelo Anthony, the teen who was accused of stabbing and killing a fellow high school athlete, has now been indicted by a grand jury with first-degree murder.
17-year-old Austin Metcalf bled out in his brother's arms after the attack. Frisco, Texas police have said the incident stemmed from Metcalf asking Anthony to leave his team tent since he did not go to the same school. The Collin County District Attorney Greg Willis announced the indictment by the grand jury just moments ago.
According to federal filings, the fundraiser began just days after Carmelo's arrest. The campaign's headline promised hope. It would cover legal fees, bring healing to the community, and keep the family afloat in their darkest hour. Thousands of donors believed it. They saw a family in pain, a son behind bars, and an urgent need for help. Some gave $5, others gave hundreds. A few even contributed thousands, trusting their generosity would be used exactly as promised. But the records, cold, emotionless bank statements, tell a story that feels like betrayal in ink.
A judge ruled today to take the money away from the couple and to account for every single dime that was raised in a GoFundMe account.
They used thousands of it to go on lavish trips, shopping sprees, and to gamble.
The lead investigator explains that within 48 hours of the first donations hitting the account, huge sums began to vanish. The money didn't sit in one place. It moved fast. Some went offshore to foreign banks, while other amounts traveled through shell companies the family had quietly set up months before any crime had taken place. And then comes the first blow of the day, the smoking gun, as the prosecution calls it. On the big projector screen, a single transaction appears, $250,000 wired directly to a man who, prosecutors say, was spotted near the stadium the very night Austin was killed. The date? Less than 12 hours after the stabbing. And no, this wasn't to pay a lawyer. In fact, no legal bills even existed yet. The prosecutor clicks to the next slide. A timeline fills the wall. Arrest. Fundraiser launched. Donations flood in. Then, money transfers, one after another, each move carrying the cash farther from where it started. The prosecutor's voice cuts through the tension like a blade. This was never about paying for lawyers, she says firmly. This was about keeping mouths shut. It was about hiding the truth. It was about covering up a murder. The Meta family sits in the front row, silent, their expressions frozen in a mix of grief and rage. For them, this isn't just fraud, it's another betrayal. Their son's life was already taken. Now they are watching evidence that his death may have been buried beneath layers of lies and public sympathy. In the quiet spaces between testimony, the unspoken question begins to creep in, one that no one wants to say out loud. How much of Austin's death was planned before that GoFundMe page even went live? The prosecution shifts strategy now, moving from the broad strokes of the scheme to the tiny, undeniable details, the kind that pin a story to the wall and leave no room for it to wriggle free. The lead investigator steps forward, a thick stack of GoFundMe transaction logs in his hands. He explains that every cent was tracked, every deposit, every withdrawal, down to the minute. He points to a second large transaction, $500,000. The withdrawal came just 3 days after the fundraiser started. It didn't go to a law firm. It didn't even stay in the country. Instead, the money traveled through a Hong Kong payment processor before landing in a private investment account under Carmelo's father's name. From there, the trail takes an even stranger turn. It's converted into cryptocurrency and disappears into a digital wallet with no registered owner. The investigator flips to the next page. Now the jury sees smaller transactions, $75,000 here, $120,000 there, all labeled as vendor fees. But when investigators dug deeper, those vendors didn't even exist. These fake companies, the prosecutor explains, were nothing but tools for laundering money, making it look legitimate on paper while funneling it to private individuals. Then she drops the next piece of the puzzle, a $60,000 payment. The recipient? A man currently under investigation for being a fixer in multiple high-profile criminal cases. Phone records place him near the stadium on the night Austin died. This wasn't a legal retainer, the prosecutor says, her voice sharp. This was hush money. The defense rises, quick to push back. They argue the transfers were part of a legal strategy to shield the family and ensure their safety. But on the projector, the jurors are seeing something else entirely, a crisp, color-coded map tracing each dollar's journey. Every arrow seems to lead toward a single conclusion. This fundraiser didn't just support a defense, it may have paid for a cover-up. Now the question in the room feels almost unavoidable. Were donors helping a grieving family or funding the silence that buried the truth? The next witness is called, a former employee of the law firm the Anthony family hired after Carmelo's arrest. She walks forward slowly, clutching a folder of memos. Her hands tremble. She testifies that she was told to process an urgent $250,000 retainer payment for the family, but it didn't come from their personal account. It came straight from the GoFundMe balance. The donors were never told. The payment wasn't put in escrow. "I'd never seen legal fees handled this way," she says to the jury, her voice steady now. And certainly not this quickly. The prosecution capitalizes on her statement, projecting internal emails between the firm's partners and Carmelo's parents. One email reads, "We need to make sure this stays clean." Carmelo's father responds, "Keep it to yourself." Another partner warns that using donated money this way could be considered fraud if not fully documented. No one ever replies. Then comes the twist. The prosecution shows a scanned receipt for a $40,000 consultation fee paid to a private investigator later caught trying to pressure one of Austin's classmates not to speak to police. This payment, too, came from the fundraiser within 48 hours of the stabbing. The defense insists there's no direct proof the payment was meant to interfere with witnesses, but the damage is done. The jury now has an image in their minds of money intended for legal defense being used to buy silence. Whispers ripple through the public gallery. Even some of Carmelo's supporters are exchanging uneasy glances. If the family is innocent, why pay people to go away? The prosecution dims the lights. A slideshow begins. Bank records appear, each line stamped with the fundraiser's name in the transaction notes. At first, the withdrawals look ordinary, legal fees, court costs, but the entries shift. One shows $15,000 paid to a Miami yacht rental company. Another, $22,000 to a luxury jewelry store, just 2 weeks after Austin's death. The purchases happened while Carmelo sat in jail, before any official legal bills had been sent. Then the blow that makes the jury stiffen. $100,000 wired to a Nevada shell corporation. The owner's name? An alias linked to Carmelo's uncle, a man with a history of financial fraud but no official role on the defense team. the prosecutor turns to the jury. These aren't defense costs. This is money laundering, plain and simple. The defense objects, again framing the spending as support for the family during a difficult time. But the next witness, a middle-aged woman seated in the gallery, shatters that narrative. She donated $5,000 of her own savings, believing it would help pay legal bills. Now, she stares at Carmelo's parents with a look that blends disbelief, anger, and grief. Outside the courtroom, social media explodes. Hashtags calling for a federal audit trend within hours. Screenshots of suspicious transactions spread like wildfire. Even some longtime defenders of the Anthony family begin publicly questioning their loyalty. For the Meta family, the moment feels like confirmation of what they've suspected for months, that the GoFundMe wasn't a shield for Carmelo's defense, but a weapon used to protect those hiding the truth. Then, the prosecution brings in a forensic accountant. Calm, methodical, she dissects the $10 million fundraiser piece by piece. The account didn't just receive small donations, it got enormous anonymous payments too. One $500,000 deposit came from an offshore Cayman Islands account. It was flagged by banking software almost immediately, but before it could be frozen, the funds were dispersed among the family's personal accounts. The chart she shows next is a spider web of tangled lines, money moving across states, into shell companies, onto prepaid debit cards. Some of those cards, prosecutors say, were used to buy surveillance equipment and burner phones in the weeks before Austin was killed. This isn't sloppy accounting, the accountant says firmly. This is deliberate concealment. The jury studies Carmelo's parents, who sit with their hands clasped tightly in their laps. Outside, news panels buzz with speculation. Viewers ask, would anyone have donated if they knew their money could be linked to planning a murder? And just when it seems the worst is already on the table, the prosecution unveils what they call the most damning piece of evidence yet. A bank statement appears on the big screen. At first, it looks ordinary, until the last page. One transaction stands out in red ink. $75,000 wired from the GoFundMe account to a private trust controlled by Carmelo's father. The date? Less than 48 hours before Austin's murder. This is not theory, the prosecutor says, pacing slowly in front of the jury. This is traceable. This is proof. The next slide shows a cash withdrawal from that trust the same day. Federal agents say the cash was divided into 3 envelopes, each handed to a different person seen on nearby street cameras. One recipient has been tentatively tied to a man spotted in the stadium parking lot that night. The defense claims the funds were for urgent family needs, accusing the government of spinning tragedy into conspiracy. But the jurors' faces tell a different story. Tightened jaws, narrowed eyes. Then, security footage from the same day plays. Carmelo's father enters a dark storage unit, stays for almost an hour, then leaves with a black duffel bag. When investigators later searched the unit, it was spotless. No fingerprints, no items, nothing but an unsettling emptiness. For the Metafence family, this isn't just about money. It's about how each dollar seems to form a breadcrumb trail leading to one deadly night. Finally, the last witness of the day, a federal forensic analyst, takes the stand. She's been piecing together the family's digital and financial activities for months. Her discovery freezes the room. From Carmelo's mother's phone, deleted text messages have been recovered. They were sent just 3 hours before Austin's murder. One reads, "Everything is in place, no more mistakes." Another, "Call when it's done." The call went to a prepaid phone registered under a fake name, pinged to the same cell tower as the stadium that night. The prosecutor doesn't have to embellish. She simply places the messages on the screen beside the timeline. The $75,000 transfer, the storage unit visit, the mysterious figure in the parking lot. Piece by piece, the puzzle locks into place. Carmelo sits at the defense table, eyes fixed downward. His parents glance at each other once, but say nothing. For those in the room, the truth feels chillingly clear. This wasn't an impulsive act. It was planned, funded, executed, and the GoFundMe that claimed to fight for justice now stands as a possible blueprint for murder. The Mehta family leaves first, avoiding cameras as the judge calls for a recess. No words, no gestures, just steady steps toward the double doors. The story isn't over. The verdict hasn't been given. But for many here today, the ending feels inevitable. This wasn't just a tragedy. It was a plan. And the last piece of it may have just been revealed. And so, as the gavel strikes and the whispers fade, we're left with one undeniable truth. This case is far from over. Behind every headline, there are shadows, and in those shadows, secrets still hide. The courtroom doors may have closed for today, but the story continues to unfold beyond these walls. Each step forward brings new questions. Each answer leads to another twist. Justice is a journey, and we are only at the beginning. So stay with me, because the next chapter might just change everything you thought you knew.